Brothers from Harlem is back. Now I'm going to tell you guys how Ori grew from a little three-man tailor shop to over 40 people, literally overnight. As I told you guys before, we made this pink suit for Johnny Thunder. And he was such a hit in it, as well as his song, Here We Go Loop-de-Loo, Here We Go Loop-de-Lie, that the very next day, I sold 70 suits to the players, all them pimps. Word got out. They got some mohair fabric, because they knew what mohair and wool fabric was, because this is what they all wore. So they knew what the fabric was. But in colors, they said, unbelievable. Now, this meant two things. They want them in a hurry, because they pay up front. And when I say, because see, when it comes to those players, you got to get that money up front, because you don't know what might happen to them tomorrow or 5 minutes down the road. They didn't have bank accounts. They didn't have charge cards. They didn't have debit cards. They didn't have any of the above. So they always carried all their money on them all the time. This is the way players did, especially pimps, because that was a business that was, I didn't realize how much money pimps made until I started dealing with these guys. So at any rate, got these 70 suits. Now we in a frenzy, cutting them. Now we already had the outlets to have them made up, but we had to cut them all, because that's what we did. We cut them, then we sent them downtown to the jobbers, who were two factories, Max Salzman, okay, Max made the pants, Tulio made the coats. So we already had that lined up, and it didn't matter how many we gave them, they could make whatever we give them. Now, I sell them on Saturday, mind you. First of all, we don't have all that fabric. So it ain't that we could just turn around and cut them like that. So now we have to go to Herman Rich in Gladstone of England and take the rest of the fabric that they have. Okay? So we get that, and we're telling them, this is about to hit big. What other colors can you do? So now they're figuring out, what other colors can we do? So they added purples, they added white. Never had white mohair before. They had an off-white, and this was kind of an off-white too, but it was a little whiter than your average off-white thing. And they had rust color, tans, which they never had before. They had tans, chocolate brown, all of these colors. We're making all of these colors for these guys. So we're cutting up the garments, we're sending them downtown, we're getting them back. Now all of a sudden, because these players are international, I mean, they travel the country and the world going around prostituting their women. So they're all over. So now all of a sudden, because they did Vegas a lot, they went to Vegas, they would go to all the big shows that came about, you name it, they were there. And because these suits were so hot, I'm going to have to tell you guys about the Players Ball another time. And all the people that wore all those colors back then. That's where the stories get interesting. But like I'm saying, we got the fabric from Herman Rich. We're cutting up fabric. We're cutting around the clock so that we can get them downtown to be made and get them on these players' back. Now all of a sudden, not just the players want them, now the entertainers started wanting those colors too. The Isley brothers are coming in there, Ronnie Isley, like colors too. Not all the real hot colors, but you know, he wanted to get away from just the little blacks and the blues and whatnot. He's coming in there. Edwin Starr, the brother who sang War, good card. What is it good for? Well, he started coming in. We got James and Bobby Purifier coming in, getting these colors. Now not just the players do we have as clients for these colors. Now all of a sudden, we got the entertainers now wearing these hot colors, which is something they didn't wear back then. James Brown now, we still making dark colors for him, for his stage thing. He didn't get that off into, we made a lot of clothes for him. We weren't his primary tailor, but we made a lot of clothes for him. But he didn't get into those hot colors. But that didn't stop the rest of them. We had Sam and Dave were clients of ours. Shorty Long, Here Come the Judge is a song he sang. We had Billy Stewart, he's the one that sang Sitting in the Park, Waiting on You. These were clients of ours, okay? And on and on. A lot of them weren't all the big headliners, necessarily the big headliners, but they were singing on that Chitlin circuit around the country. Now everybody wearing these cars. Then the spinners started coming to us, you know. So we had a great array of superstars back then. Now these were the 60s superstars, not the 70s, because the whole look changed in the 70s. But during the 60s, if you wanted a colored suit made, you came to Ori's Custom Tailoring. Now, what happens? The rest of the country and the world started, the other tailors, because like I tell people, we were not the only tailor for any of those people that we named, but we were one of the tailors, okay? But we had the colors, we had the array of it, and we had first choice on it, because we were, Glasson of England is their primary buyer of these clothes. And in tailor shops around the country where these guys made a stop, because if you know anything about the Chitlin circuit, it runs around. These were the clubs and the theaters where black entertainers could perform back in those days. It was called a Chitlin circuit that they operated in. And most of them did a round robin around the country. So they would get suits made for us. They had somebody in Texas that made suits for them. They had somebody in DC that made suits for them. They had somebody in Chicago that made suits for them. And normally, and this is what happens to clothes, normally they would order here, so by the time they come back around, suit be ready. Because they would make a lot of these stops around the globe. And the clothing that entertainers wear, first of all, this was the best stuff, but it's not durable. Because, here's what happens, so that you guys will understand about clothing. Back in those days, they didn't have the technology and even lighting. So if you ever been to on a stage back then, boy, those lights are so hot. Them boys would come off the stage, they would be dripping wet from sweat. You know, because everybody had a little dance move as well as their singing. So, when they came off the stage, all right, these clothes are wet. And if they were doing, not like the Apollo Theater where they were there for a week, and all of these theaters didn't give them a week. Some of them gave them a day, sometimes they did one-nighters. One night here, they traveled to the next city, do another night here, and on and on. The Apollo gave them a week. But, as the wardrobe people had, when they come out of these suits, it ain't like they cleaned them right away. They throw them in a bag. Sweat started to mold and whatnot. But they got them clean, yes. But it wasn't like you immediately took them out, because I'm telling you, these clothes would be wringing wet from the perspiration from them hot lights and that, you know, and they're on singing. Ain't no rest. They don't sing one song. They're doing a show. So they're out there till it's wet. So they had to have several changes, because if they performed in this one here, they couldn't go to the next town or theater and perform in that one. They had to change. And sometimes the clothing that they had didn't immediately get, first of all, they didn't air them out. They just threw them in a bag and went to the next spot. Okay? So when they were in New York, they had a week. So if he wore it today, they could get it in the cleaners. And before they left town again, because they weren't going to wear them at that theater, not at the Apollo, not 2 times in a week. So they had enough changes, but at least they could get their clothes ready for the next town or city that they went to. But that's how it worked. And Their wardrobe people had to be up on it. But what happened is, the perspiration and the cleaning would kill the clothes. Or it'd kill it real quick. See, it's cleaning that kills your clothes, not just necessarily wearing. Because it wasn't nothing but sweat. But it's the dry cleaning, the heat, that would kill that mohair fabric. And it wouldn't last that long, so they were always buying clothes. And this was the beauty of our business. They were always buying clothes. So we were always in business because of that. And I'm here to tell you, being a wardrobe person for those entertainers was not an easy job, especially if you had 4 or 5 in the group. And then you, like James would outfit his whole band as well. Now a lot of times the band members didn't have as many changes, but they needed some changes too. Because if James changed, then Maceo Parker and the boys had to change. Now we didn't do the women's clothes, see? And they had to change. And every time, they couldn't come back out in the same thing. Couldn't come out. Because you'd be surprised how many people would go to those shows and come 4 or 5 different times to the show. Now they would change the music around because they had a repertoire of music that was enough to not have to sing the same songs again. But they sure had to change clothes over and over again.